You have to represent the audience you're trying to communicate to, yeah? And if you're a load of white middle-class blokes like you and me, you're not going to be very good at getting the right insight. If you don't act according to principles, it's so bloody obvious, right? And everything breaks down. So you've got to live and die by the principles that you've found.
I think we're going to get to a point where actually we're just kind of going to go, this isn't working. The human touch needs to come back into this a lot more. If it doesn't work, say, fail fast and move on and take those learnings.
Remember, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. God made you with 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So go in and really listen, yeah? Have a proper program of going in, properly absorbing, listening to all types, from the receptionist to the chief financial officer, you name it, the customer, the whatever it, the whole supply chain. Really go out and be seen to do it, and then make your call in that 100 days.
We're delving into the world of advertising, marketing and entrepreneurship today with Ian Priest, a true industry veteran with over 35 years of experience. From co-founding the renowned agency VCCP to serving as the IPA president, Ian's journey is a masterclass in innovation and leadership. We'll explore how his diverse experiences, from global chairman roles to mentoring startups, have shaped his unique perspective on talent acquisition and business growth. Join us as we unpack Ian's insights on the evolving landscape of advertising, the importance of partnerships, and his current passion for social impact through Onwards and Upwards. Get ready for a conversation that bridges the gap between creative excellence and commercial success in today's dynamic market. So Ian, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Thank you. What a lovely intro, I have to say. Thank you very much. And I have to apologise up front because I've just been to the dentist. So if I come across, I haven't had a glass of wine yet. Yes, at 11 o'clock this morning. So it's the dentist doing that. So apologies.
Not a problem. But just good to clarify that you don't start drinking before 11 o'clock. So that's fine. Let's get cracking. We ask this question to every guest, as you know. Yeah. So what are your experiences of hiring and being hired, and what are your lessons learned?
Yes. So as you said, in that 35 odd years of veteran, it's always slightly worrying me called a veteran. And I've worked for various ad agency groups, part of a big American group, DMB&B, a really sort of hotshot creative agency, Hal Henry, starting my own, being part, as you know, when I met you, part of CSM, and working for a headhunting firm as well as a charity. So I've got a real sort of varied experience, from big companies to small companies to startups. So, but what I would say, talent is, it's overused, the word talent, right? But as we all know in the creative industry, especially as the words AI keep coming up, obviously, I really like AI, by the way, and it's not sort of King Canute here and trying to stop the tides, stop the waves coming in. Yeah. It's about how you embrace it. But what's key is talent to any organization. Overused, right? But it's so true, especially in the creative world, is how you attract and retain and motivate talent, because that's ad agencies particularly, as well as sports marketing, as well, is, it's down to the individuals. Really, you're not really selling a washing machine or anything like that. You're selling creativity. Yeah. So that's why I've always had a massive interest in talent. So I look at it from two perspectives. One, when you are the talent and you're trying to join an organization, or you're the manager trying to attract that talent in. So what are my sort of learnings from it? I think from the first one, being a individual going for an interview and going for a job, I think the key thing to do is remember you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Yeah.
Right? Because it is a two-way thing here, right? You've got to find what's going to be a great environment for you to flourish. And, if you're ambitious, you should have a strategy for your development. So you've got to find the right culture and people to work with so that you can grow. And obviously, with a view to you growing them and doing a great job for them. But and what So I'd say research is a massively important part of when you go in. I find too many people don't do enough research on the company they're about to join, right? Actually, for example, find out who's worked there before. Yeah. Research the person you're interviewing. Research the company. What do they actually do? What do customers think of? Really proper research. And too many people go in without that, and they're not doing themselves justice. And always, always, always have at least 3 questions you're going to ask them, because you're interviewing them as much. And when you flip it around the other way to the manager hiring that talent, it's really impressive. Yeah. When they properly research you, they found something out, and they've got 3 sometimes quite difficult questions, and it slightly puts you on the sort of, I like it being put on the sort of back foot. Oh, he's interviewing me, isn't he? Or she's interviewing me. So that perspective, and then I'd say when you flip it around the other way and you're trying to hire talent, remember exactly that. You're trying to match their ambitions with your ambitions. So it's really important that obviously you research them. You do proper references. It's amazing how many people don't do proper references. And remember, by the way, when you do a reference, obviously when I say, oh, I've got the so-and-so reference, that I've approved, do more than that. Because it's obvious I'm going to put someone there, you're going to say something good about me. You got to do a lot more than that, right? But I would say part of it would be give them a task. So often the first interview is, really sussing them out, and is there a good match here? But then give them the second interview, and don't make it too onerous because it's unfair. But giving them a proper task to test, see how because that's when you really see them in operation. And make sure that it's not just you. You're getting a variety of people seeing them, so you get perspective across your culture. But then it happens the other way. So then they're experiencing. So if you go to Amazon, or they have a whole process that you have to, I think, meet 9 or 10 people. Right, it takes forever. I'm not saying you necessarily do that, but what I mean is that when you're hiring, when talent is so important, get that matched agenda, that cultural fit, but make sure you're really probing from both sides.
I think, there's a lot to unpack there, and you've basically just done the whole podcast in about the last 5 minutes, so it's brilliant. But I think there is, the bit I want to touch on first off is the work element, as in do the work, and the research piece. And I think I completely agree with you in the sense that I think that there is, I've banged on about this for a while now, but there's a tendency now to go the easy route, click easy apply on LinkedIn, whatever that might be, and not necessarily do the work in order to actually kind of understand whether or not it's not necessarily about whether you can do the job. It's actually about whether you can do the job at that organization.
Yeah.
And I think the task element is really interesting, because I completely agree. In an ideal world, you would go in there for 2 weeks and people would be able to see, right, this is how this person works, this is how he or she does the day-to-day, but also do the big things, how they approach it, etc., etc. Because when you are, as an interviewee, when you're going into that interview, you're selling yourself, and therefore you're putting your best foot forward. You're not going to be, as much as anyone can try and say they are, 100% every single day. And so actually being able to kind of understand how that person works is quite critical. I suppose the question back to you on that then is, from your experience, and certainly from a creative side of things, it's slightly, correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly creatively slightly easier because you have things like portfolioes, etc. But from more of an account side of things or a sales side of things, you don't necessarily have that portfolio. Whether you should is a different question.
No,
but
true.
So how, even within an hour task, a presentation, whatever that might be, how can you really get into actually how this is the way this person thinks and works?
Okay, well, I think it's always best to give an example.
Yeah.
So I'm now working with this charity, as you mentioned, Onwards and Upwards, which is all about breaking the cycle of reoffending, basically starting companies that employ prison leavers. We put in, we needed an head of operations director. And what we'd launched at one business called Exo Bikes, it's all about the bike business. We're about to launch, and we're just doing it now, is Exo Barbers, right?
Yeah.
And so we actually get the task in the interview process was you've got 20 minutes. It's a 20-minute presentation from an operational point of view. What are the key things you'd be thinking about from an operations point of view if you were launching a Barbers?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's and it was just fascinating how people responded to it. Yeah. And you really saw how someone's brain worked, how what they were like personality wise, and just skills. You really, it was a very simple request, but it really showed the difference in how people approach things. And I mean, if I'm being asked one of my best hiring, that literally is one of the best hiring. The lady we've taken on, Maria, is unbelievably good, and we found it out through that process. Yeah. So I think you can do it for, as you say, a creative will have a portfolio, so you know what they've done. By the way, you need to work out who did what on it. Yeah, the amount of times I've heard who did tango, right? I know exactly who did tango, right? Not some other people who've done variations on it and things like that. You know what I mean? Or the gorilla for Cadbury's. So just you need to check them out, right? And that's what I probe when talking to creators. So what was your actual role? How did it work? Who came up with the idea? But I think you can do it for account handlers, for planners, for whatever it may be, salespeople, is give them a relevant task to what you're trying to do, and make it simple and just see how they respond.
So I agree, but the pushback to that is, and this is obviously very prevalent in advertising as a whole, in terms of ultimately you're pitching, and if it's a very specific real world piece of work, and as your example was, do you find pushback sometimes from candidates that go, well, this is ultimately my kind of thought process. If I'm going to give you a strategy or whatever it might be, are you just going to take that and utilize the best parts of it with whoever else you hire?
Yeah, so you can, they're cynical.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, don't forget that's what agencies do for clients when they pitch.
Exactly that,
and they're going to nick it.
Yeah.
And so what you do is non-disclosures and all that sort of stuff. So you do it properly, and you're a complete tosspot of an organisation if you do that, right? And you will get found out. The world's just too small, right? But it's a valid question. But but it doesn't have to be something that someone could take. I don't know. You might give an account handler. You might give them a scenario saying, very senior client. You paint a scenario, bit of a bully. She comes in with this sort of comment in a meeting, and it causes this sort of crisis. How would you respond to that? Do you see what I mean? So that's not something you could sell on. It's just seeing how they would work given a particular task that's relevant to their job.
Yeah, and it also that type of question and probing starts to delve into the values that they hold dear to themselves as well, and whether or not that then comes into the kind of links with the company values. And you mentioned around the cultural side of things earlier in the answer as well, and making sure that when you're doing research on the company that the culture fits for you, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of the companies that you've built, how have you made sure that cultural element and those values pieces are seen as they've got bigger? Because obviously VCCP went from 4 of you to the behemoth that it is now. So how did you make sure that as you grew that, culture and values remained a central tenet when you were bringing new people on all the time?
Yeah. So just before I fully answer that, I think it's really important that when you're building a team, that you've got their complementary skills you're bringing in. You don't want lots of Ian Priests. Yeah. I want Charles Valency's Rooney Club. I want different skills. Right. Firstly, that overused word diversity. Yeah. And with its age, gender, cultural background, whatever it may be, and I'm not doing it just to be. It's not just a woke reason. You're doing often because you have to represent the audience you're trying to communicate to. Yeah. And if you're a load of white middle class blokes like you and me, you're not going to be very good at getting the right insight. Yeah. So, but the third one on values, I think it's really important you have similar values. So it's complementary skills, yeah, diverse backgrounds and thinking, because you don't want robots, and agreement on values, right? Because that's really important. If you've got completely different values, you're gonna destroy it. So then, how do we do that at VCCP? The values and the principles. Actually, because it's a bloody good question, because that's how we address VCCP. When we started off, we got very lucky. We got the opportunity to launch O2, right? Two of my partners that we found launched Orange, and me and Adrian had launched things like Go or Egg or things like that. So we got a lot of experience of launching brands. So all we did was do that for the first year. We never did a credentials presentation. So after about 9 months, we wanted to do more than O2. We looked at going to the intermediaries like the AAR and people like that, and go right. So we had to go at doing our creds, and they gave us some great feedbacks. We asked for their input rather than just, here you go, this is us. Which she said, look, I know you see hundreds of these credentials. Can you be honest and give us feedback? And we came up with a sort of, we're a through the line, creatively effective, strategic, whatever we come up with, right? Really? Another one? Really? So what we actually did we had 10 founding principles that started VCCP, which is our values. So it was even things like be on time, be responsible, be unprecious. There was a number of things that we wanted. When we went back to our bigger agency lives, it used to frustrate us, but also frustrate our clients. And they went, that's your position, right? Do it on your principles, right? So that's how we started. We didn't say creative, strategic. We went, right, we're going to tell you what we're like to work with. This is what our values are, right? Then you find match clients, right? So it's not only a matching talent, you're then matching client, and then you do good work, right? And then practically, how did we take that on? So we used to review. So in our 3 months in, 6 months in annual reviews, we used to review people against those principles. We even used to review our clients on 360-degree feedback to go, this is how we say we live by these. Go on, tell us, how do we? So that has been a massive part of VCCP, is having values that are very, very overt. Yeah, they live. So they're all around the agency, and people are reviewed against them and our clients. And that is the key reason VCCP has grown, because it's got very, very clear culture based on values and bringing in new people, diversity, to build on those values, even to challenge those values. Even said, look, drop one or two if it's not right. So you evolve the culture, but it's based on foundations.
And I think that said at the end there around the kind of the challenge element, I think is something that I'm not sure a huge amount of organisations really do across the board. Because I think, coming back to, you say overused word, but the diversity, I think one of the core elements and most important part of diversity is that diversity of thought, rather than age, gender, race, whatever that might be, because that inherently comes with it. But said it perfectly well, two white middle-class men sitting here. I think there's too many industries that have too many people that look like us and don't reflect the people that they're selling to, or they're trying to attract, or trying to bring in as fan bases, or whatever kind of sector or industry that is. And I think the more you bring people in that look and think the same as you, the less that challenge happens. And I think if you look at it from a review and reflect element to that as well, I also think that actually when you're bringing people in, there's not enough review and reflect on the people that you're bringing in. You do the kind of annual appraisals or 360 appraisals, or now actually a bit more, or hopefully a kind of bit more continuous appraisal process. But I still think unless you really look at, right, okay, this is where we need to get to over the next 12 to 18 months. These are the types of people we need to bring in. but actually we need to be reviewing everyone that's in that process. And I suppose, how did you find that? Because it's a big thing from a startup now, as well as you're looking at from your experience of startups, is you need to bring the right people in, and actually having a bit more of that longer term talent strategy, I think, is not something that is necessarily thought about as much, but I think is just as important.
So I think you learn from the past.
Yeah.
So if you're lucky enough to get the opportunity, like you've been bold enough to start your own thing, is learn from the mistakes as well as the good things from the past. Yeah, and you pick out the good things and try not to do the bad things that you've experienced. And that's what we did at VCCP. And by the way, it's really important that obviously when we did the founding principles there, then you've got to live it and breathe it, right? As the leaders, right? Because as soon as you go off tack, and as you get as potentially as leaders, egos grow as you grow the company, right? If you don't act according to principles, it's so bloody obvious, right? And everything breaks down. So you've got to live and die by the principles that you've found, and make sure that the guys who come in, as I said, challenge it, evolve it, right? So, but it's really important having, we used to give, awards for things. So it's got to be living, breathing, rather than just words somewhere. It's got to be a living, breathing part of the culture. And it's the company that we both work for, which I loved, CSM. But if I was being critical of CSM, it was the old Chino. It was the Chino Brigade, yeah. And a lot of agencies. This is where I learned, right? So I came from below the line, a company called IMP, part of DMB&V. So we did sales, promotion, and direct marketing, and we didn't have really, our creative department were sort of the guys who, the account handlers would come up with the idea, and I'm being overly simplistic here, and the creative department would draw it and write it up slightly better, yeah? And in PR, that was sort of the case in the 80s and 90s. You've got lots of all-rounders, right? What I learned from ad agencies, and Hal Henry particularly, is the skills needed to come up with great ideas. You need the strategist who really understands the insight, to give the insight to a creative brief, and the creatives genuinely will be far more creative than the all-rounders by coming up with, because they're script writers, they're visual, they're fully trained, and then you've got the producer. You've got sort of 4 or 5 different skills that are molded to create brilliant ideas. That's where I think sports marketing it could have learned from the ad industry model a bit, and we tried it with the CSM, and we got somewhere, and I'm sure it's now part of Wasserman, I'm not saying copy the agency model, but learn from the best bits, because a lot of the agency model was a bit slow, and a bit sort of costly, but bringing in real proper strategies with insights and real creatives make you a more diverse skill base and come up with better ideas. So I think that's what I would encourage. When you're starting something, just learn from the best practice of others, all right, and try and take out the negatives of others.
Yeah, I think that certainly the sports industry, obviously that's kind of where the experience lies, is guilty of having a little bit too much ego around. We know best. We're just going to carry on doing what everyone else is doing. And I think looking at, on the way here, messages about the rise of it is clear now that YouTube is taking over in terms of time watched by, I think the chart I looked at was 4 to 15-year-olds. It is 10-20% higher than the next, which is Netflix. And what does that, what impact does that have? And I think actually, again, utilizing, right, okay, what are they doing? How can we tap into that? I think is a key skill, not necessarily one that's utilized
not enough
in a huge way.
The other thing that's not is effectiveness.
Yeah.
In the sports marketing world, is in this world we've now got data, and you can track things. It was often sort of said, I mean, when I first came in, because I was IPA president, and and IPA. Well, the reason I did it was all about effectiveness, and I love creativity that works. I mean, oversimplified, But that's what we're here for, is to grow a company. It's growth, as you said earlier on, right? And that's what marketing's about, is an investment to grow. Where, it was shunned slightly in sponsorship and sports marketing. And I'm hoping it's moved on a lot recently, but still, you need the talent to understand how to embrace data, how to embrace effectiveness, right? To make sure that you're advising your clients to go, when you come up with this idea or this strategy, it's going to work and it's going to pay back, right? And it was too much about that old adage, "Oh, is the chairman's wife," or the chairman thinks it's something we should do, so we should do it. Yeah, but just make sure you're professionalizing. So that is another part of the talent, especially in the sports marketing world.
I think it's the rise, terrible way of terming it, I think it's the prominence of the CFO now in terms of, right, actually, the market at the moment isn't good. Economically, we're not in a particularly brilliant place. And so if you're going to spend millions of pounds on sponsorships or advertising or whatever it might be, you have to give a return on that investment, not just this is a brand play. No, there's nothing wrong with it being brand plays, and this isn't just relevant to sport. This is across the board. But without having an ability to go, this is actually going to impact on the investment that we're putting in here, you're going to struggle. And I think, coming back to your point around investing in the talent that can do that, I think the talent is there. The talent is very much out there and willing to come into the different industries. What you need is the investment and the faith from the managerial level to go, we're going to bring this in. We're going to invest in X, Y teams. And you see those, whether it's brands, whether it's advertisers, whether it's sport, whatever it is, those that are doing the best at the moment are those that are actually investing in those areas in a much more overt way.
And I would say not only big companies who are sort of putting big money behind sponsorship or advertising. I'm chairman of a small ad agency called Dog, Cat and Mouse, and they're ex-Hal Henry people that I'm mainly working with. So we're all in our 50s, early 60s, right? So a lot of people would say you're out of touch and you don't really get it, yeah? So they've made a benefit of being experienced. So the idea is they're targeting scale-ups. So they're calling themselves grown-ups scale-ups, right? Yeah. And so because a lot of scale-ups they're often too small for ad agencies because they need to have, I don't know, 2 million spend to even, Often these are sort of starting to invest in marketing 300 grand, 500, right, whatever it may be. And so what you have to do with them is again, effectiveness is even more important for them, And we had a really good presentation from a client who, in fact, it's an Australian underwear CEO. And he came in and was showing us what when he does influencer marketing through Meta, right? When he does a post, you see exactly the responses on that post. And then you see the hits on the website and then the sales, right? And it's literally data. Yeah. So what we were trying to talk to him about is short-term tactical stuff. How do you also build a brand? There's a great book called The Long and Short of It, the IPA. How do you build more medium and long-term as well as short-term sales? So and that's the sort of, you need skills to bring in and talent to be able to do that. People who really get the world of Meta, maybe it can come from other industries, but that can evolve our industry if we embrace, this, where everything is going, more data rich, more digital, more AI, whatever. That's what I'd be keen to do, is talent with tech.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and I think the agency the social media agency that I used to work for it was very much all about that. How can we make sure that the content that we are serving for our clients not only is entertaining and is people want to watch it, but actually there is a fundamental link back to the product and the brand build of that. And I think when I was there, it was still quite nascent, and I don't think we certainly didn't have that data side of it there as well as I think we probably should have.
Yeah.
But you've mentioned it a couple of times now, so I'm going to change tack slightly onto AI. Now, I'm a huge fan of it. I use it all the time. It makes my life considerably easier at points. But when you're looking at it from both from an advertising perspective, but actually also from a talent perspective, my view is that with the view now that you can use AI to write a CV and a cover letter that is exactly specific to a job description.
Yep.
Comes back to the work element, but we've kind of covered that part. But also then companies that are using AI to sift through CVs based on a job description.
Yes.
My view is I think we're going to get to a point where actually we're just kind of going to go, this isn't working. The human touch needs to come back into this a lot more. In terms of the stuff that you're doing now and the experiences that you're having through all of the different elements that you're working on, how have you seen the introduction of AI into companies, more specifically on a kind of talent element?
Okay. So I should give it the best example is, so I was chairman of Grace Blue, right? So for those who don't know Grace Blue, they're a headhunting executive search firm in the space of advertising, media and marketing and sport.
Yeah.
And when you're because headhunting executive search is focused on leaders, it's not your classic recruitment model. Yeah, you get paid slightly differently. You get paid a third up front, a third on shortlist, and a third on the person signing the contract. There's a lot more people involved, right? Because and it's got a bigger consequence, the hiring. One, it's a higher salary and all that, but two, it can genuinely change the business if you bring the right leader in,
and if you bring the wrong one.
Yeah. So the process is far more strategic and thorough. So yes, you could. So the people side of it is massively important, but the to get to that long list, AI can do a lot of that. Can speed up that first stage of getting to a long list before you get to the people. Then need to get involved in interviewing to get to the short list, and then it's all the people skills I talked about earlier about how you interview and all that sort of stuff. So AI. So Grace Blue, we all went, right, we can see it. This is a few years ago. We went, right, with LinkedIn, blah, blah, blah. There was no one techie at Grace Blue. So we actually, through our big talent search companies, we actually found this guys from the States who were strong at AI. And we actually said, rather than us try to do it, we work with them and help them come up with a tailor-made AI search facility for the communications industry, right? So it's really a LinkedIn for the industry, yeah. So we gave them our data. So they had 15 years of data about leaders in advertising, marketing, whatever. We gave them a lot of our input and time. Anyway, they built a platform. And one of the things about it was they scraped it from LinkedIn. But if you think about LinkedIn, when you're trying to find a profile of LinkedIn, you and I will write our LinkedIn post. Yeah, it will ask summary and So actually, again, am I lying on it?
Yeah.
Probably, I'd be pretty stupid if I am lying. But it is obviously putting my best foot forward. It's the best version of Ian Priest out there. What you can do with AI now is not only find out what you're putting down. Let's go back to me. What's Ian Priest putting down? It will scrape the web, right? And will go, so what did he work on? Did he get any awards? What were these blogs? What's his social media doing? But so they can scrape a lot more things and give more 360-degree view and come up with a more rounded version of that individual to then put into help you come up with a long list. And this can all happen like that.
Yeah.
So it used to take a researcher 3 or 4 weeks. You can do it in seconds if you set it up correctly. So that's, I think, to give you an example of how AI, and what happened, and you'll love this at the end of this story. So this AI firm, we helped build it, they're called Sinecure. And it's not perfect like any AI tech platform, but it's proving quite interesting. So much so, they've actually bought Grace Blue.
Okay.
So that it's like cuckoos. It's like the babies bought them, the parent. And because again, that's genuinely going talent meets tech. in their product is talent, yeah? But it's embracing tech to then go better what your old processes, but match it with what you're brilliant at. So it's still people. It's people using a platform that's it's tech driven, but you need all the people skills there to find it from there on in. So that's probably a good example about how to embrace it. One other quick example is VCCP set up an agency, an AI agency called Faith. And they deliberately went, right, rather than just fiddle with AI, right, and what it can do in the creative process, let's go full in. Right, and have a bunch of guys. Now, I don't know where it's got to, being honest, but I love the idea of go full in. Yeah. They'll fail quickly. Yeah. But rather than just you can tinker, I don't think you get very far by tinkering. Hence, that's why Grace Blue went, we're going to give you specialists. Come on, you do it. Otherwise, we'll just tinker.
I think that's it. I think you're not going fully in. You're going to learn some stuff, but you're not going to learn a huge amount. And there's always going to be that kind of thought in the back of your mind of, what if we'd have done this, then we could be much further down the line. And I think, again, there's a lot of organisations and people that are kind of tinkering with it to try and understand, well, how can this help us? When again, the organisations that are really flying at the moment have gone two-footed into it ultimately and gone, right, let's just do it. If it doesn't work, you say fail fast and move on and take those learnings and look at how we can do it. And I think certainly it's a really interesting time. Obviously, there's so much hype around it, and it's a completely different podcast if we wanted to get into it in more detail. But I do think it's a really interesting space that I think it's going to come to a head a little bit, where you've got organisations that are using it, certainly on a hiring and a talent perspective, using it a little bit too much and relying on it, and those that aren't using it at all and taking too long. And I think that's kind of time frame element is quite critical. But on the time frame element, we're coming to the end of the podcast. So before we do, there is one question that I want to make sure that I ask, which is the one we ask at the end. And that is, what is the one piece of advice that you'd give to those looking for roles and those looking for the best talent for their organisation? So 2 pieces of advice, I should say.
So I've sort of said it earlier on, if I'm being honest, is sort of the ones looking, I'd use the word research. Right, research heavily. But remember, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And the word I'd use, task, is the other way round. Is that in terms of when you're interviewing someone, obviously properly research, reference and all that sort of stuff, but give a really relevant task to see it, to see how they respond. So as I've sort of covered that, I just thought I'd say something else, was from a talent. So if you jump ahead from the recruiting to then the other really, really big thing is onboarding. From a talent point of view. And I've seen some really good examples and bad examples of it in my time. But the one thing I remember is the 100-day thing. You probably see it like Keir Starmer 100-day. Yeah. But I love, especially in leaders, right? If you're a leader, say if you're going in as a chief exec of a company, and you'll give a time frame of 100 days. That you're going to come back with a plan, but use those 100 days. And I always remember someone told me, God made you with 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So go in and really listen. Have a proper program of going in, properly absorbing, listening to all types, from the receptionist to the chief financial officer, you name it, the customer, the whatever the whole supply chain. Really go out and be seen to do it, and then make your call in that 100 days about, right, I've listened, I've done that, and this is what I believe we should be doing. This is the plan going forward. So that onboarding is whether you're the talent going in there or whether you're the manager of that talent, have put real effort into onboarding. So that would be the one I'm building. So I'm not really answering your question. But that's I've seen the benefits you get from both sides, if you do a proper onboarding program, is unbelievable.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, again, it might have to be a part 2 to this, but I think there's a big difference between going in and saying, I'll come back with a plan in 100 days and being asked for a 100-day plan as part of the interview process, because you can't do that listing element. You can go in and go, well, this is my 90-day plan or 90-day strategy, but actually that could be completely blown out the water in the first week as soon as you start talking to people. So I think flipping it to this is how we onboard, not how we hire, is a really interesting way to end. Let's put it that way. So Ian, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, as it always is.
I could probably have a drink now, so I'd probably make you speak better. But nice to see you, Dan. Really good to see you as ever.
Thanks.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Ian. He is one of the greats of the advertising and business world. So I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. If you did, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. It all really does make a difference. And please share with anybody you think might find this useful as well. But thanks for listening and watching, and I will see you for the next episode in a couple of weeks.